Vatican correspondent Christopher Lamb is the author of The Outsider, Pope Francis and the Battle to Reform the Church. And he's joining me now from Rome. Christopher, welcome to the program. Were you also, given you're a scholar of all of this, did it send chills up your spine? Did you sort of, internalize the history of what we're seeing?
Well, Christiane, yes, it was really extraordinary to witness this, and I really felt like I was seeing, an historical and extraordinary moment. It is an amazing turnaround, as you said. 500 years ago, King Henry VIII broke with Rome and established himself as leader of the Church of England. And in the centuries afterwards, the relationship between the papacy and the monarchy was one of conflict, tension and suspicion. The Vatican, or the Holy See, and the British state only re-established relations in 1982. And so to see this moment where a king and a pope, an English king and a pope, were praying together in the Sistine Chapel beneath the frescoes of Michelangelo, with the Vatican choirs and the royal choirs singing together, it really was an extraordinary moment. And I think also partly this is down to King Charles's own personal faith. He seems to have a very strong faith, and he is willing to engage with the Catholic Church in a way that no British monarch has done in centuries. So it really did feel like an extraordinary moment to witness today.
And Christopher, Buckingham Palace waived its essential ban on seeing any British monarch, pray in public. They allowed these pictures, so it was a clear message. And as you said, the king is not only known for his personal faith, but also as sort of an ecumenical activist, if you like, as well. I mean, he believes in interfaith. On the bigger picture of interfaith at a time like today, not just between Catholic and Protestant, but on a bigger picture, Jews, Muslims, Christians, in this very, very difficult and turbulent world right now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this visit sent a message that divisions and disagreements of the past can be overcome, that they don't have to define the future. I think that's what it was saying today. I mean, the intra-church battles have been violent. They've led to deaths, to martyrs. But today was a sign, a symbol that those divisions, however deeply felt, don't have to have the last word. And I think that's what was being communicated very strongly today by Pope Leo and King Charles. Pope Leo is concerned about polarization and division, and his meeting with the king, I think, shows that dialogue is possible, that it's important to listen. It's important to have an ability to talk to people who you still do have disagreements with. I mean, let's be clear, the Catholic Church and the Church of England and the wider Anglican communion do have profound differences, particularly when it comes to the ordination of women, for example. The Catholic Church bars the ordination of women, but the Anglican Church does not. And so, despite that, though, and this is what a Vatican official emphasized to me, despite the deep disagreements, the visit today shows that those don't have to define the relationship. And I think that's a very powerful message to communicate today.
And you mentioned ordaining women, where, as we know, Sarah Mullally has recently been appointed Archbishop of Canterbury, the head of the Anglican Church, just after the King, and that's a first, the first woman to lead the Anglican Church. And as you say, clearly the Catholics don't allow that at the moment. But even though Pope Leo hosted the King and Queen, did this invitation come from Pope Leo? Did it come from Buckingham Palace? Was it something that Pope Francis has set in motion? Do you know what led to it and why it's taken this long, 500 years, for this to happen?
Well, this visit had been planned under Pope Francis. King Charles and Queen Camilla were to undertake a state visit to the Vatican in April, but because Pope Francis got unwell and was hospitalized, it had to be postponed. The King, though, did manage to briefly greet Pope Francis earlier this year when he was undertaking a state visit to Italy. So Pope Leo is the second pope that King Charles has met this year. So this is something that comes from the Francis pontificate but has been taken up by Leo. I mean, more broadly, in the last, say, 60 years, the Catholic Church and the Anglican Communion have been undertaking a dialogue. They've been seeking to work more closely together. They've been trying to resolve doctrinal and other differences. That's been going on for the last 60 years. It really began when the Archbishop of Canterbury, Michael Ramsey, the then Archbishop, met with Pope Paul VI. That then started a dialogue which in many ways has been the sort of context to what we saw today, which also included King Charles going to the Basilica of St. Paul's outside the walls, a very important Roman basilica, where he sat on a chair that had engraved on it, "That they may be one," which is the motto really of the movement to try and bring the Christian churches closer together.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and all those little details speak real volumes. I said when we started that you had written a book about Pope Francis, and I understand that you're going to publish next year your book on Pope Leo. So in the time that he's been pontiff, and let's not forget he's American, brought up in South America, is his agenda and where he's headed and where the church is headed becoming clearer?
Yes, I think in the last few weeks, the Leo papacy has really taken off. And I think it is clear that Pope Leo wants to continue with the reforms and the direction that Pope Francis wanted to take the Catholic Church, whether it comes down to things like protecting the environment, calling out for better treatment of immigrants, but also reforms inside the Catholic Church, which Pope Francis was keen to develop and keen to move forward on. Of course, Leo is the first American pope in history. It's extraordinary that the cardinals chose an American pope. It was previously thought impossible that that would happen. But Leo is also someone who spent many years in Latin America. So he follows on from the first Latin American pope, and his vision of the church is really shaped by his time, his years in Peru. And so he is someone who is very much in line with the Francis vision of the church. Of course, he does have a quite different personality to Francis. Pope Francis was kind of very charismatic pope, a real disruptor, you could say, to the clerical and Vatican establishment. Leo is a more low-key individual. He's a bit more process-focused. He's perhaps a little more reserved. But he is determined, and he clearly wants to build on the vision of the church that Pope Francis articulated and the reforms that he began.
Mm-hmm. I'm still thinking also about what you said. Both Pope Francis and Pope Leo showed a willingness to criticize America and, certainly this president on issues that they believed, defied the charity that the church is meant to stand for, whether immigration or other such things. Leo doesn't do it in a direct way. Here's what he said recently, addressed to, the Trump administration, maybe to the president. Here's what he said.
Someone who says that I'm against abortion, but I'm in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigrants who are in the United States. I don't know if that's pro-life.
So in general, addressing what he, I guess, sees as hypocrisy when it comes to this issue.
Well, I thought those remarks from Leo were very significant, because what he was doing there was he was explaining that to be pro-life does not simply mean being anti-abortion. Now, there are those in the Catholic Church in the United States who want political opposition to abortion to be the front and centre priority for the church. And indeed, the bishops of the United States have wanted that. But what Leo was saying in those remarks is that to be pro-life means more than just opposing abortion. It's a broader canvas. And his remarks about abortion were also linked to the death penalty. So Pope Francis, during his papacy, changed Catholic teaching to say that the death penalty is inadmissible. That received a backlash from certain conservative Catholics in the United States. And when Leo made those remarks about abortion and the death penalty and immigration, he also has received a lot of criticism from conservative Catholics. But what Leo is doing there is he's saying that you can't just isolate one issue when it comes to Catholic teaching. To defend life means to defend all life, and I think that is going to be his approach, even though it means he is likely to face criticism from some parts of the church and, of course, political opposition from supporters of the president.